It has been 3 days since the Cell Games, and Trunks is preparing for the voyage home. Thankfully, his injuries were minor, so he needed little recovery time thanks to his hardy Saiyan genes. Sadly, the same cannot be said for his father, who moments later comes limping into his bedroom. Thanks to Android 16's sacrifice, Bulma was able to transplant his mechanical heart into Raditz, saving his life. However, the Saiyan has a lot of rehab ahead of him before he'll be up to fighting like he used to. Even walking proves difficult during this early adjustment period, and that is why the big man's arm is slung over Tien's shoulder. Bulma had offered to give the Triclops one of 16's arms as a replacement, but he had politely refused, saying he would rather keep this wound as a reminder that once he was enough to terrify the greatest threat Earth had ever known. Greeting the two men, Trunks asks how they are feeling, and both stoically reply that they are fine. Raditz then asks if Trunks is done packing, an air of sadness in his voice, and Trunks confirms that he is, saying that growing up on the run taught him to pack lightly. The big Saiyan then mumbles that Trunks doesn't have to go, that is, if he'd like to stay, he would always be welcome in this timeline and at Capsule Corp. Trunks smiles, realizing the effort his usually guarded father must have put into exposing himself like this emotionally, and so thanks him for the offer, but says that this timeline already has a Trunks, and because of his father's heroism, he will be able to grow up in a world free of the androids. Raditz says he figured Trunks would say that, but he had to at least try to keep him around, before adding that even if he's not the same Raditz who raised him, he knows that any version of him would be proud to have him as a son. The pair then hug, before Trunks takes his father's weight off of Tien's shoulders, so they can walk down to the courtyard together. Outside of Capsule Corp, everyone is waiting to see Trunks off. The hybrid thanks them all, shaking hands with Nappa, Tien and Krillin, before turning to Gohan. The boy hasn't said a word since the battle, only surviving thanks to Krillin and a newly released Nappa carrying him to the nearest hospital. Taking a knee so they can see eye to eye, Trunks solemnly tells his cousin that he knows exactly what he's feeling. And maybe this isn't what Gohan wants to hear right now, but what happened with his parents isn't his fault. Gohan says nothing, his only response being to let tears flow down his cheeks. Trunks makes no move to stop this, knowing this is what his cousin needs, and so simply pulls him into a hug and whispers that though Gohan can only see darkness now, one day the sun will rise again. He just needs to hold on and stay strong until then. He then goes to make his final goodbye, that being Bulma. The pair share a deep hug, with even baby Trunks, who is honestly more of a toddler at this point, pulling on his older counterpart's hair as a gesture of farewell. The adult Trunks smiles at them both to be safe and look after each other, and when Bulma gives her love in return, he floats into the air and lands in the cockpit of his time machine, setting a course for home. It is only a matter of seconds for Trunks, but around him, 20 years pass and he finds himself outside the long-abandoned ruins of Capsule Corp from his timeline. So changing the past hasn't changed the future. A shame, but one he was prepared for. And so Trunks flares his key, hoping it will summon the androids quicker, since the sooner he dispatches them, the sooner he can see his mother again. Trunks doesn't have to wait long for androids 17 and 18 to arrive. The pair look unchanged despite 3 years having passed since he left, but the same cannot be said of Trunks, and so 17 comments that the kid's really been hitting the gym lately. Good for him. Too bad it won't do a lick of good against their flawless android power. Smirking, Trunks asks if the black-haired bot is done talking, and with an annoyed grunt, 17 says he guesses he is, since now he's in more of a killing mood. Still smirking, Trunks says he took the words right out of his mouth, then vanishes, only to reappear moments later behind his enemy with his key sword drawn. 6 swift slashes of the glowing blade are enough to turn the once insurmountable android into mincemeat, and as the chunks that once made up 17's body hit the ground, 18 gasps. However, she is not given long to mourn, as a key blast finishes her off seconds later. And just like that, the world is at peace after 2 decades of android tyranny. Only now does Trunks allow himself to relax, and with a smile on his face, he flies off in the direction of the last hideout he and his mother occupied. Bulma is waiting for him, and when they see each other again, happy tears run down both their faces as the blue-haired woman throws herself into her son's muscular arms. Mother and son talk late into the night about Trunks' adventures in the past, and while she is sad to learn of the cost of their victory, and the fact that changing the past cannot undo the horrors of this timeline, she is immensely proud of her son. Being an eternal pragmatist, Bulma immediately wants to set to work making preparations for this version of Cell's arrival, but Trunks says that before they do anything else, there is someone he would like to pay a visit, as he pulls a large hard drive from his breast pocket. And then without another word, he takes off into the sky. Landing outside a heavy steel door hidden within a mountain face, Trunks steps into the abandoned lab of Dr. Gero and is pleased to see that his target is still intact. Firing up the computer, Trunks opens the final undisturbed pod, and from it steps the hulking frame of Android 16. Being newly activated, 16 asks Trunks why he has been awakened and who the young man is. Smiling, Trunks replies that 16 has been activated to help defend the world from a terrible threat, and as for who he is a fellow defender, and in another life, the two of them were comrades and even friends. A few months pass with Bulma, Trunks and Android 16 making preparations for the inevitable arrival of Cell. During this time, Bulma is able to transfer all the memories stored in the hard drive Trunks brought back from the past into this future version of 16, allowing the heroic android to live again. He is pleased to see Trunks, and the feeling is mutual, with the future warrior asking the android if he would be willing to fight Cell by his side once more. 16 smiles that though he's not violent by nature, nothing would please him more, and so the pair set to training, just in case this Cell is more powerful than the one they're expecting. Finally, the fated day arrives, and while Trunks is inspecting his time machine out in the open, a sinister insectoid creature pounces. Wrapping his pointed tail around the warrior's throat, Imperfect Cell cackles that it looks like it's the end of the line for Trunks, since he'll be borrowing his time machine to go absorb the androids of the past. From behind Cell, a mechanical voice asks why not start with an android from this time, as 16 springs his trap and blasts the bug with a Hell's Flash. Cell screams, and Trunks uses this opportunity to draw his key sword and make two decisive cuts. The first to sever Cell's tail, freeing himself, and the second to take the bioandroid's head. As his body flops to the ground, Cell's head demands to know what is going on, since his data indicates that Trunks was weaker than him, and 16 was still dormant. Trunks replies that unfortunately for the bioandroid, another version of Cell from the future already tried killing him and going back to the past. But together with his friends, he managed to kill that Cell, and prepared this little ambush just in case another version was skulking around, wanting to try the same dirty trick. Cell begins to panic, recognizing that he is quite literally up to his neck in trouble, and so drawing on the rabbits in him, tries to entice Trunks with an offer. He says that if he understands correctly, Saiyans love to fight strong opponents, so why not let him go? Then he'll go absorb the androids, and come back here so they can have one last spectacular battle, man versus machine. For a moment it looks like Trunks is considering it, but then when the half-Saiyan shifts to the side, Cell realizes that Trunks' expression was merely because he had the sun in his eyes, and more importantly, that he is doomed. Without a word, Trunks lobs Cell's head into the air, and 16 is there to catch it, using a single rocket-powered punch to turn the last fragment of the ultimate life form into nothing more than dust. The pair of friends then depart into the sunset. They still have a lot of rebuilding to do, and many of their scars will never heal. But they have each other and Bulma, and finally, after so many hellish years, they have returned their world to peace.